Hey, Mrs. Ramsey. Come here.
Hi, Chris. How late were you up with Scott going over your testimony?
Too late. He kept coming up with one more question till I finally said to him, ask me anything else and I'll kill you.
She was kidding.
I am a little on edge. I'm putting my life in Scott's hands.
Now, you can still change your mind, you know. You don't have to testify.
But practicing with Scott last night, even when he rattled me, I knew I was telling the truth. And if I can get up there and do it in front of a jury...
You're going to be acquitted.
The only problem is, I don't know that Scott believes I'm innocent.
She all right?
Yeah, of course she's nervous, but she's ready for this. She's very thankful to have you on her side.
I want you to imagine that I'm holding you in my arms and giving you a big kiss.
Oh, but Chris, what would the jury think?
Oh, probably the same thing that I do, you know. Your husband is one fine specimen of a human being. Who's lucky to have you. It's gonna be okay.
This trial court in the state of New York is now in session. All rise. The Honorable Anita Martin presiding.
Please be seated. Let the record show the defendant is now being represented by Scott Baldwin. Mr. Baldwin?
Your Honor, the defense calls Dr. Julie Devlin Ramsey. Let's take the stand. So tell us about the night you met Greg Cooper.
It was the night he held a gun on me.
Why did he do that?
He'd been kicked out of the internship program and was looking for revenge. So he took the General Hospital interns hostage.
And how did you feel when that was happening?
Frightened. Sure that I was going to die, that all of us were going to die.
And someone did, right?
The chief resident, Dr. Falk.
Was that the end of your contact with Greg Cooper?
No, a few months later, he kidnapped me.
Wasn't he in jail?
At first. Then he got himself transferred to a psychiatric facility. Supposedly because he had a seizure, but he told me later he'd faked it.
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor, we're not offering this as fact, just what the defendant believed at the time.
I'm going to allow this line of questioning, especially since the prosecution has made Mrs. Devlin Ramsey's state of mind an issue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Julie, tell us about these kidnappings.
Well, it came as a total shock that Greg Cooper was even alive. Everyone thought he died in an explosion that he had set at Forest Hills, the institution where he was incarcerated.
And what happened when he took you as a prisoner?
He dragged me to the basement of his house, chained me to a pole, left me there without food or water.
What else?
He drew lines on my face because he said he wanted to cut me up and rearrange my features to look like someone else.
Look like who?
His long-lost sister, Marcia Cooper. He said I was Marcia, but he had to get the look just right.
Would that have satisfied him?
No. No, he wanted to hear me say I was a sister.
And when you refused to go along with him?
He, tortured me for weeks. And I, became very disoriented from hunger and abuse. And I began to believe that I was Marcia Cooper.
How did you manage to get away from him?
I was rescued by Frank Scanlon and Chris Ramsey. They got me safely away from Cooper's physical control.
You say his physical control?
Oh, he couldn't hurt my body anymore. But he still had control over my mind. All those weeks he kept me. The only face I saw was his. He was my only source of hope as well as fear, my only human connection. And I'm ashamed to say this, but against my will, I started to depend on him.
So, you said while in captivity, you began to think of yourself as Marcia Cooper. After you were freed, did you still feel that way?
Yes, and I fought against it with everything I had. But even from the institution, Cooper wouldn't stop calling me and writing to me, reminding me of everything we had shared.
He made plans with you, right? Is that correct? That's something he wanted you to be a part of.
Yes. He was bent on killing people. All the people who he thought had wronged him. And he believed general homicide, which Kevin Collins had just published, gave him the perfect blueprint to follow.
Up to and including the death of John Canellos.
John was never a part of it. The next victim was to be Joe Scanlon. But at the Halloween party, Joe and John were wearing the same costume.
Yes, and we all know the result. Now, according to previous testimony, you confessed to this murder. Is that correct?
Because I believed at that moment I'd done it. Greg convinced me I had.
But you don't believe it now.
No, the therapy I've had with Dr. Rachel Locke has helped me to recall what really happened.
Well, good. Tell us about that.
Greg called and told me I should get to the Halloween party early. He said I should claim that I wasn't feeling well. Go upstairs, wait there until I heard from him.
So you didn't go outside, as Frank Scanlon testified?
No, I went upstairs instead.
Why?
Well, Greg had called and ordered me to go down to the mad scientist lab of the funhouse. He said that that's the place where I would find the body of Joe Scanlon. And I was to stand there and,
I know this is very difficult for you, but the jury has to hear what you went through.
It was, John lying there, not Joe. And the blood was oozing out on the floor, and I said to myself, I'm a doctor, I have got to help this man. But when I went down to help him, I discovered that he was already dead.
He was dead before you got there?
Yes.
Well, let me see if I have this straight. You got to summons from Cooper that there's going to be a murder, but yet you don't lift a finger to stop it.
What was I supposed to do?
You were supposed to call the cops, for crying out loud. Call Joe Scanlon and tell him he's about to be killed, you know? But you let it happen. You let him be butchered like some kind of an animal.
You don't understand. Greg made me believe that he was all I had in this world. That he loved me, he protected me, and if I turned against him, I thought he would destroy me.
So does Cooper have this hold over you now?
No.
Did you kill John Canellos?
No. I did not.
According to the timeline, you weren't under Greg Cooper's control for more than a year when John Canellos was murdered.
That's true, but
And what were you doing during that year?
I was an intern at General Hospital.
Were you a good intern?
I received an excellent evaluation. Yes, I love my work.
Did you pay your bills okay? Did you do your laundry? Did you hook up with your friends? Did you treat your patients?
Yes.
So it was a normal kind of life. Until you got caught at the scene of a grisly murder, and then all of a sudden you realized, hey, I'm under the control of another person.
It wasn't like that. I could function in the real world without Cooper's instructions.
But when it comes to killing, you are suddenly and conveniently under his thumb.
Objection, Your Honor. Badgering the witness.
Sustained. You've made your point. Move on. You claim that in certain matters you felt you had to obey Greg Cooper.
That's right.
And that in these same matters you had no control over yourself.
Yes.
Like confessing to a murder you didn't commit?
Objection.
Or actually committing a murder yourself?
Answer.
Yes or no? Mrs. Ramsey answered the question. If you had no will of your own, if Greg Cooper was in total control of you, couldn't he have ordered you to commit a murder for him?
Yes. But I wouldn't have done it. I didn't kill John Canellos.
Because you're a helpless puppet, but you also have a conscience?
Objection.
Withdrawn. I'm finished with this witness. Mr. Baldwin?
Since the prosecution brought it up, do you have a conscience?
I must. Or I wouldn't feel so badly about some of the mistakes I've made.
But it's not visible. You can't touch it, but you know that your conscience is real.
Yes,
Can you tell the difference between what's real and what's not?
I think so. I know so.
Is it real that Greg Cooper convinced you that you were his sister, Marcia?
Yes.
Do you believe it now?
No.
Is it real that Cooper made you think that you murdered John Canellos?
Yes.
Is it real that you did murder John Canellos?
Absolutely not.
And you're telling the truth now, aren't you?
Yes. Like I said, I've made mistakes in my life. I've done things I'm ashamed of. But there is a line I will never cross, and I could never murder anyone.
Why are you so certain of that?
I think because of my brother, Buddy. We were very close. And then he died, and I felt like I'd lost a part of myself. And people told me the hurt would go away. But it never has. I'll always miss him. And that is when I started to understand how sacred human life is.
Is that why you chose medicine for a profession?
Yes. I thought if I could save lives, it would be a way of honoring what my brother had taught me.
What would that be?
That every single life is irreplaceable. And it's why it's so painful for me to think about John Canellos. I'm innocent of his murder. But there is nothing I can do to bring him back to the people who loved him, to the children he might have had. All that love, it's gone forever. And I would never take that away from him or anyone.
Thank you, Julie. No further questions.
Does the prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
The defense rests.
We'll hear closing arguments tomorrow. Court is adjourned until 10 o'clock.
All rise.
You okay?
Yeah, just barely. How do you think it went?
You did fine.
Hey, Counselor.
Hey.
Lee and I would love to take you to dinner for a job well done.
Well, it is stone crab season, but I think it's a little early to celebrate.
Oh, listen, I had my eye on the jury. They were with you the whole way.
Yeah, they sure were.
Hey, you done good. You got through it, didn't you?
Scott, thank you.
Just doing my job.
Well, you erased all my doubt.
Does that mean you believe I'm innocent?
Yes, I do. It's like you've been someplace far away, but now you're back.
Right where she belongs.
With the people who love you.
Well, at least because of Scott, I got to tell my side of the story.
Mrs. Ramsey, time to go.
Well, I better get to work.
Yeah, I hear the chief resident is quite a barracuda.
We'll walk you out, honey.
Okay.
See you later.
Hey.
Okay.
Good job, son.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lawyer, sir. Can a girl buy a steak dinner?
I just turned down a stone crab dinner. I'm going to have to eat in and work on my closing statement.
I will help you.
Okay.
Okay.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to thank you again for showing the jury what kind of a person Julie really is.
Well, let's hope they bought it.
Well,
You still have your doubts, don't you?
Was it that obvious?
No, not in the way you defended Julie, not at all.
Then what makes you say that?
Because I know you, pal. Something's eating at you, isn't it?
Well, let's say I got a little closer to believing that maybe she's telling the truth, and hopefully the jury heard what I heard. I mean, who knows?
So what are you saying? You think she has a shot?
Well, let's say it went from a long shot to even money.